In Madison, Georgia, a bell rings out from a 4-story tower. It is a Romanesque beauty of brick, granite, slate, and wood, as beautiful today as it was in 1895. That's when construction began on Georgia's first graded elementary school.
Yeah, I was born in 1918, and so I came here 12 years later.
Well, I started here in 1937.
I started here in January of 1940.
I started the school here in September of 1944, and I was 6 years old.
This building is just a huge part of my life. I went to grammar school here, which was 1st grade through 7th grade.
We have a lot of good memories of this building, a lot of fun times, and a lot of fun relationships that were started with friends here, and some of those friends still exist. It's a special place.
Today, most of us don't think much about constructing a new school, but this was always more than just a building. This was an investment in the future.
Public schools means much for Madison. Give them to her, and the benefits will be manifest to all at once. The question is to be decided Tuesday by your votes whether we shall stand still or fall into line with other progressive towns and have the advantages of a splendid and harmonious public school system.
For the civic-minded, the way was clear.
It is a question of vast importance, paramount to any now or probable to be brought before our citizens for a long time to come. Prove your loyalty to your city's interest by voting for public schools.
Great thought and care went into every detail of the project. The architect chosen for the design, Walter P. Tinsley of Lynchburg, Virginia, had already designed the campus of Virginia Intermont College. Supervision of the work was assigned to Nicholas Ittner, an accomplished builder of courthouses, libraries, and other public buildings.
The contract for the public school building was let last week to Nicholas Ittner of Atlanta for $14,556. He was here on the 31st of July, and he stated that work would begin within 10 days from that date. The building is to be finished by December 15th and will, we are sure, be ready by that time. Mr. Ittner is a thorough businessman and contractor, and although a stranger, made a very favorable impression upon the board while here as to his ability and character.
Ittner delivered on his promise. These solid oak doors opened in January of 1896, and for the next 62 years, this beautiful landmark fulfilled its original mission of educating Morgan County's children.
It would ring every morning, and I don't know how far you could hear it, but I lived right down the street across from the old gymnasium. I would hear it ring, and I could run up to get to school and get in line and march in with them. We called it marching into chapel. Miss Martha Rhodes taught piano lessons here, and she would play the piano, and we'd all march into the auditorium for chapel every morning, open up with prayer and everything before the school day started.
We took the standard English and mathematics and history and all that sort of thing, even down to penmanship.
I attended the 5th grade, which is this classroom, the History Museum, and my teacher was Effie Underwood, who was a wonderful teacher and the best handwriting I ever saw, and we all learned to write under Ms. Underwood.
There was a lunchroom out back. It was a detached building, I think built in the 1930s probably. It was just a small brick building, and we would go outside around the building and go into that lunchroom.
After we got through eating lunch, we'd go out here in the front yard and shoot marbles. That was the big sport back then, and we wore out many a pair of overalls on our knees shooting marbles.
Hopscotch, we had jump rope, dodgeball. The big kids played on down toward the annex building down there, and us little kids played around the lunchroom. And jungle gym, and we had a slide that I thought was a monster slide. It was all metal, burn you up on hot days. Get you a piece of wax paper and you could fly.
It was not only used as a school, the adults in the community would come together and they would have plays and they would have musicals. We had a movie here in the community, but we had no television or anything else to entertain us. And when they had the talent programs and things like that, everybody came. It was filled up. The whole place would be filled up.
Perhaps the best known and most loved figure in this building's rich history neither taught nor took classes here.
We had a janitor, John Moreland, that was well respected, honest, hardworking, likable gentleman. He was a hod carrier when the building was built.
He was so good with kids and took time with us, you know, and whatever. And so he had a little space of his own down in the basement, and he would let some of us that wanted to get away or sneak off during recess or something. We could go and visit with John, just sit around, and he would regale us with his stories. And that's a great memory.
The son of former slaves, John Moreland lacked a formal education, but he studied the teacher's lessons on the blackboards after the school day was over. Eventually, John mastered every grade in the school.
And when he would come in, he always looked to see what problem was on the blackboard. He'd stay a minute and listen to what was being said by the teacher. And he picked up a better education than we did, probably.
They loved him. He had been here such a long time, and he identified with those children. But he'd let them ring the bell, the rope that hangs down in the front hall now.
He would sort of help you because we were little guys. The rope would actually pick you up if you held on to it. He held on to the thing to make sure it didn't just carry you on up, I guess.
When the community honored John on the auditorium stage for 50 years of service, he gave an eloquent speech of appreciation.
And I know about 1948, they had a celebration here. Now you're talking about the segregated South and honoring a black man. It just wasn't heard of in that time, but they had the black leaders of the community here and the white people. They all came together in the auditorium down here and honored John. And Time magazine did an article on him being here.
He was the heart of the school for the whole time he was here. He rang the bell to let us in the morning, rang the bell to let us out in the afternoon. He was a gentle soul, he was kind, and he was enormously dignified. We loved him. It's foundational for me. It's given me a default way of looking at everything as being secure, calm, making sense. We were not stressed out in this building. We were happy. We were excited. We were full of mischief, and it was tolerated to the degree that it could be tolerated. I thought everybody went to school in a building like this. It wasn't until I was much older I could look back and say, wow, this was my elementary school.
After bare feet and chalk dust and filling little heads with knowledge, after 62 years of hard use by thousands of students, the elegant school building was worn out.
That was at the time when the school building authority, I guess it was the state school building authority, had deemed that this building was not suitable for students.
We were overcrowded here. We liked the idea of having a new school and more space, and I would have an office, you know, whereas I just had this cubby hole here, and we had a library in the new building, which we didn't have here. There were a lot of advantages like that.
We moved during the Christmas holidays. We had to get prepared for the movement. We did not take the desk that we had, but the books had to be carried over there, the maps, the globes, and so forth.
I don't think most people felt very sentimental about leaving this place. We enjoyed going to the new school and having a brand new place to be, and it was comfortable, new lunchroom, all of that was, so we didn't really look back that much.
1958, when the Board of Education did move to a new facility and wanted to get rid of this building, a group of men from Morgan County decided that they wanted to save this building. Robert Turnell and Kay Tipton and Joe Bell formed a foundation to buy this property from the Board of Education and to preserve it. That was the beginning of the Morgan County Foundation.
How lucky we were that our moons and stars were lined up so that the building was saved, because there was talk about putting an industry in here, or there was some talk about maybe tearing the building down.
They bought it to keep it from being destroyed. And at the time, we didn't have a library.
And then in 1960, the Morgan County Foundation had this building, acquired this building, and offered the space to the Morgan County Library and what was then the Uncle Remus Regional Library System. On the first floor was the Morgan County Library. On the second floor was the regional office, at least a few offices, and it lasted from 1960 to 1974. It's fascinating to read the library minutes. Constant discussion about the condition of the building. The floor is about to collapse due to the weight of the books. The roof leaks and it's causing damage to the books. The building desperately needed renovation and restoration. So in 1974, the library system left because of the fear that the building would literally collapse with the weight of the books and the leaky roof.
Once again, the elegant historic structure stood empty, facing an uncertain future. For the building to survive, another purpose for it must be found.
I knew that the library had moved out of the building, and I knew that there was a group of people who were seeing about the building or trying to decide on a future use for it. Adelaide Pondo, she and her husband owned the newspaper at the time, and she is the one, I think, who put on the table the idea that this could be not a community center and that people in Madison could use it for whatever, but something on a much higher level, that we could have performances in this auditorium, that we could have revolving exhibits throughout the rooms here in the building.
One of the hallmarks of the center, I think, that makes it distinctive and a decision that was made early on was the vision to go larger, meaning regional, as opposed to local, while emphasizing Madison and Morgan County and its rich history. It was important that we embrace the Piedmont region, and that put us in good stead. We simply didn't have the people or the resources locally, and we wouldn't have gotten the funding from major foundations statewide and from the National Endowment for the Arts and Humanities if we had been only local.
Well, we knew that the building was in bad shape. We talked with contractors about what we might do to, just save the building or just patch it up. Every time we talked to anybody, the amounts grew and grew. And we learned right off that what we were going to have to do is to prove that we were really behind this project, and we needed to raise some money locally to show that people were behind it. So we installed a thermometer type thing out on the front lawn, and our goal was to raise $50,000 to show that we could had some staying power, I guess you would say, to these people from outside of Madison. We put that money in an escrow account so that if we didn't ever make our goal, they could have had their money returned to them.
As it turns out, the conversion of the grade school into a performing and visual arts center and history museum was the first in the state of Georgia, really, to be done like this, and has been a model not only statewide, but regionally in the Southeast. Many arts centers, as they've begun to look at doing the same thing, have come here to better understand a successful experience.
Several things stick out in my mind. Of course, they were just personal favorites. One was when Taj Mahal came here and gave a concert. So that was mind-blowing to me. Then Bobby McFerrin, which was enormously exciting to hear him perform. The Vienna Boys Choir, I couldn't believe that they were here performing. And I think they came a couple of times. And then every year at Christmas we could count on a great performance from the Atlanta Symphony.
And we're trying to broaden our base of our members. And that was the idea behind the Cow Day, was to bring these people in. To honor the cow, because she was a mainstay of agriculture at this time. The Cow Day was an art exhibit, so it was built around an art exhibit that would ran here for maybe 3 to 4 months. Cow Day would be on a Saturday, and we would bring in different breeds of cattle, different sizes, sex, color, and all, and to where people could experience the cow itself and understand and know what they were, how they felt, how they smelled, and things of that nature.
Wayne Vason, a classmate of mine from 1st through 7th grade and then on into high school and to college, came to me. He was one of the former chairmen of the board of the Cultural Center with the idea of starting a chamber music festival. Wayne's guidance and involvement of his friend Christopher Rex from the Atlanta Symphony and the support of the Turnell Foundation and then subsequently the Harris Foundation honoring J.D. and Sally Harris. The Madison Chamber Music Festival was founded.
Visual and performing arts are terrific, and they're more my interest, but the History Museum is distinctive. It's unique. It's the only one of its kind in the region.
We didn't buy anything. It was all donation. But we were selective, to be honest, in what we would accept.
The Piedmont History Museum includes artifacts and interpretive information of the Piedmont region of Georgia, as well as 19th century decorative arts and handicrafts. Visitors enter the Piedmont History Museum through an 1857 Greek Revival doorway, salvaged from a local home.
When it comes into the front hall, and we go into we put the things that told about the land.
Cotton was the predominant crop in this area of Georgia during the 19th century and into the 20th. Artifacts show how cotton was gathered, placed in a burlap sack, and then weighed in the fields with a steel yard. The large jar was made in 1859 by the slave potter Dave, who signed his work and often included his interpretation of Bible passages. A corner of a hand-hewn heart pine log cabin from the early 1800s rests on the original field stones which were part of its foundation.
One day I was riding along and I saw these people look like they were dismantling this log house, and I said, well, we'd like to have it.
The scale and brass weight were used to verify merchants' scales. Nearby are various documents used by businesses in Madison to conduct commerce and trade. Weddings were important social gatherings, and the dresses by the Rosewood Melodeon are both wedding dresses. The Piedmont History Museum reveals the past as the Madison-Morgan Cultural Center moves into the future.
As we've done strategic planning and tried to look ahead in terms of how do you build on the vision of those who've brought us where we are, we've identified 4 prongs. It's high quality performing and visual arts, history museum, regional, showcasing that with our antique show, a lot of the different programs we have, our tour of homes involving the community. But then the 4th is going back to what this started as, education. And that's bringing kids into and educating them on all of our programming, because that's the future audience, is the future support, but it is an equal priority in terms of programming so that we elevate our children's programs, not just performances here, but that we can go into the school systems and bring artists into the school systems and supplement what's woefully inadequate in education in terms of the arts.
I've always been more concerned about the education side than the other, even though the other is important. And I was willing to come on the board of directors here, first of all, because I had been bringing students here, attending the puppet shows and all of the other things that were done here at the Cultural Center. Even I think that I helped to influence moving, back in those years, moving some of those things from the Cultural Center out into the schools.
Seasons pass into years. The elegant structure proudly stands, an enduring symbol of a community, but much, much more than bricks and brass. Its ringing bell celebrates an enduring commitment to serve, to enhance Morgan County and the entire Piedmont region, now and forever.
When this building was first opened under this present foundation, my mother, who was still living here in Madison at the time, called me up over there in Griffin and says, Floyd says, come over here and take me to the opening. Says that they're gonna open that school building over there. And says that I want to attend the opening. And when I got there, she told me, she says, you know, she says, I don't understand what's going on exactly with this. That these people talk about that old building and preserving that old building. She says, that's not any old building. Says, I started the school in it the year it was built. She was 86 when she told me that. But it still was not an old building. So as far as I'm concerned, I guess I don't consider it an old building either.
The memories in this building, still have a hard time separating them out when I walk through the door. I feel like I'm coming back into grammar school. It's been a great thing to happen to me, and I'm sure everybody reports pretty much the same thing.
It does bring back memories, good memories. As a kid, you know, you would sometimes you'd have to sort of stand in line to let John let you ring one of these things, and you know, you stand here, and it was a thrill when it got to be your turn to ring the bell.